Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here at the Delaware County Sustainability Commission meeting. And so now I'll share my screen so we can get started. Okay, so what I'd like to remind you is this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. The recording and the minutes will be posted to the Sustainability Commission website. And you can participate by sending in comments to gogreen.co@co.delaware.pa.us. And here's our agenda for today. We're going to first do the roll call. And again, welcome to all of you. Then if we have quorum, we will approve the June meeting minutes. Then we will have a Chief Sustainability Officer update. We do have a guest speaker from the DVRPC who will then speak next. And then we'll go over the subcommittee updates, one from the Greening County Operations Group and the Creating a Countywide Sustainability Plan Group. And then we will have a discussion about the Sustainability Planning Framework with Sharon J. And then you can actually send in public comment anytime through that email address, and then we will adjourn. So with that, we'll do the roll call. When I call your name, if you're here, say present or here, or whatever you like. Sean Stansel.
Here.
Becca Yurkovich. Stephanie Howe Hassanali. Steve Clark.
Here.
Oh, great, okay. Carol Martzoff, that's me, so I'm here. I believe the next three are not here, but I'll just say anyway. Jacqueline Rhodes. Scott Sidlow. Jenny Sachs. David Director.
I am here.
Thanks. Okay. Now for the government attendees. Ed Warner.
Here.
Donna Burnett. That name doesn't sound familiar to me anyway. Mark Manfrey.
Here.
Thomas Schaefer.
Here.
Connie Butler, or a designee from Connie Butler. Ed McGargy. I did see Ed around. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Laura Goodrich Cairns.
Here.
Thank you. Okay. Francine Locke.
Here.
Sharon J.
Here.
Howard Lazarus. Elaine Schaefer.
Here.
Pippa Barrett.
Here.
Carol, for the names at the bottom, they're just public attendees that have attended before, so we don't actually have to do the roll part of it.
Okay.
But we could say if there's anybody else that we didn't say your name, if you'd like to put your name into the chat, and we'll make sure that it's recorded that you attended the meeting. We could do something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So if there is anyone else in attendance, just put your name in the chat, and we'll make sure that you get on this list. So let's see if we have quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Looks like we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 public members and not 5.
I think was maybe it's Stephanie that was going to maybe be here for the last half of the meeting. We could see if we have Becca or Stephanie come in later.
Okay.
Then we could always do the quorum and do the minutes then.
All right.
Or we can do them at the beginning of the next one.
Okay. So if they are here later, we can then approve the meeting minutes. But since we do not currently have quorum, and that's one thing that we're doing differently is that we have to, it's not the total number of people, but the sector that they're from too that matters. So
Yeah, folks, we found a copy of the bylaws, and that's actually written in the bylaws that it has to be a minimum of 4 of the government members and 5 of the public members for us to be able to have quorum. So we're just a little short today. So we can still have our conversations. We just can't do some of the official things.
right. Okay, so with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Sharon J. to go over the Sustainability Commission charge.
Thank you. So this is one thing we're going to go over at the beginning of every meeting because we want to make sure if there are any people listening to the live streaming for the first time that they know what our charge is as a Sustainability Commission. So we'll just read this off at the beginning of every meeting just as a little level setting for folks that have never joined before. So our charge as a Sustainability Commission is to make recommendations regarding best environmental and energy practices in the areas of buildings, facilities and operations, fuels, vehicle and transportation, food, responsible purchasing, housing, energy sources, air quality, stormwater management, natural and cultural resource protection, wildlife preservation, and climate change. It's also to identify and assess environmental and energy policies that the county has adopted and make recommendations to promote and educate about the county's environmental and energy initiatives. It's the identification and recommendations regarding voluntary actions, projects, and programs for municipalities, businesses, nonprofits, and other partners to implement county environmental and energy policies. It's the creation, review, and ongoing input into Delaware County's Sustainability Action Plan, and then to recommend triple bottom line related actions, projects, and programs to the council for implementation. We can go to the next slide. So now Francine is going to do the Chief Sustainability Officer update.
Thank you very much. So I'll jump right into it. Just an update on our CPACE program, or the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program for local county businesses. As you know, we formally adopted the CPACE program in March of this year. We are going to have a webinar hosted by SEF, who is the program administrator, on August 11th at 1 p.m. For more information, here's the website for businesses who may be interested in this program. And the registration for the webinar is going to go live next week, which is approximately three weeks before the event. So just an update on our capital improvement program. We're creating an open and transparent practice for the CIP planning so that the public is aware of where we're spending our capital dollars and how we're getting there. So as I reported before, on July 1st, we had a draft CIP that was due. That was actually generated by the steering committee, and it was provided to the Capital Projects Committee. Now, this Capital Projects Committee is a committee that is written in the administrative code, and their role is as an advisory and review group on the development of our CIP. We're trying to have a meeting the first week of August to review the proposed CIP, and after the committee completes the review, we will then present it to council. There are actually 2 members of council on this committee as well, Dr. Monica Taylor and Councilmember Elaine Schaefer. The other members of this committee include the planning director, the public works director, and the budget director. And so just wanted to mention how we're prioritizing our projects that are included into the CIP. We look at unsafe conditions first for funding. We look at non-compliance issues in facilities, regulatory requirements. We would look at items that protect an existing asset. Any funding for a project that advances a strategic goal, such as our sustainability goals. And it's specifically, we're going to look at the county's sustainability goals when we are vetting the capital improvement projects. Anything that enhances community quality of life, such as parks, open spaces, that will be something that is a priority for our capital projects committee. Any projects that are leveraging partnerships, any projects that can be construction ready. So in other words, projects that already have a design that has been put together by the Public Works Department, we will consider that as a project that should move forward. And other projects that provide economies if done with other efforts. So I thought it would be important to bring in the facility condition needs assessment update after the CIP because they tie in very closely together. As you know, we have a facility condition and needs assessment project going on right now with KCBA as the lead consulting firm. The purpose of this project is to create a baseline for all of our county-owned properties so that we understand the condition of all of our building systems, our parks, our trails, our open space, and we are able to then vet projects and fund them equitably, knowing the baseline of all these conditions. And there's also an energy audit, a commercial grade energy audit that is part of this FCNA that will provide us with energy conservation measures that are prescribed for each one of our buildings. And each one of those will have a return on investment provided by KCBA, how long it would take to get that return on investment, and so that we can make educated decisions based upon data with our capital dollars as we move forward. I've actually asked KCBA to also look at our current CIP to give us the preliminary findings that they have so we can get started on providing data on the CIP. Once completed, KCBA will report their findings to our Sustainability Commission here. A nice project I wanted to share, since we were talking earlier about preservation of historic structures. There was a side talk before the meeting. One of our members has a very old piece of furniture that has been passed along for many years. So the Chester Courthouse was built in 1724. It's in Chester City. It's the oldest continually used courthouse in the United States. And the County of Delaware is acquiring this building from the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, PHMC. They are no longer able to take care of it, and so we felt as though this was a really good opportunity for the county. So 2 agenda items were approved by council on June 16th. One is to enter into a lease agreement with the Delaware County and Pennsylvania Historical Commission at no cost to the county for 99 years. And then to reallocate $35,000 from the Delaware County Bar Association to the Delaware County Historical Society, raising the amount in the Historical Society line item from $50,000 to $85,000. The reason for that is because the Delaware County Historical Society is taking on the stewardship role for the Chester County the Chester Courthouse, not Chester County, the Chester Courthouse. And so I just wanted to share this with you folks because it's very important to realize that the county does take it seriously in terms of heritage and preserving our history. Just another note, the facility condition and needs assessment consultant is doing they just performed a survey on Monday of this week so that we have a full understanding of the physical condition of that building prior to Delaware County signing off on the lease. This is really important. Councilmember Schaefer is here. She was very adamant about making sure that the county is fully aware of what we are getting into so that there are no major surprises found with the building's condition that would cause the county an excessive amount of money. And so PHMC is providing funding for repairs for this building prior to the county taking that on. I wanted to give an update on the Southeastern Pennsylvania Regional Power Purchase Agreement that Delaware County is participating in with Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester counties through the DVRPC or the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. We are sharing an RFP and an MOU for entering into agreement with an energy consulting firm. So DVRPC will be the custodian of an RFP to find an energy consultant to help this group of counties in energy procurement concepts, ideas, so that we are getting clean energy at the best possible cost to the counties. The final comments are due back from county solicitors by July 16th today. Our Delaware County solicitor has already provided feedback. We were the first to do so, and we actually gave, our solicitor's office gave a very good amount of feedback, and that has all been adopted by in the RFP and the MOU. And the final MOU is expected on July 23rd, and we plan to present it to our county council in the August meeting. Some really good news, and now it hasn't been finalized in terms of official, but I received the go-ahead that Delaware County has been selected for year 3 of the PADEP's LCAP program, or the Local Climate Action Program. By late July, we will be matched with at least 1 student. The first training webinar will be scheduled in early August. And the next slide tells us a little bit, oh, I'm sorry that it's not there, but there was another slide that kind of explained the background of what that is, a climate action plan for our county. I think we all kind of have the gist of what that means, but we're very excited. And so here's something that's interesting. The DVRPC is facilitating with the Power Purchasing Steering Committee, which is Delaware, Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester counties, participating in this PJM Cities and Communities Coalition. So if you know, PJM is the operator of the regional wholesale electricity marketplace, and they provide the reliability of our electricity grid. And so Provident Energy provided a presentation to our Sustainability Commission not long ago and explained the role of PJM. But we're considering joining this PJMCC, which is this coalition with guidance from the DVRPC and in collaboration with our neighboring counties from the RPPA Steering Committee. So this coalition is attempting to pursue solutions to climate change, reducing carbon emissions and removing barriers to decarbonization in the regional wholesale electricity market. Now, this is a large market, and so a lot of our choices are made for us in terms of the way we procure energy based upon this. So this is a big step for PJM to open up and do this. Cities and communities within PJM's territory have partnered together to coordinate efforts and build capacity among a wider set of cities to influence a return on investment policies. So we would have our say-so in policies or some input on that. So just to provide another update regarding the solid waste management plan, the Delaware County is mandated every 10 years to produce a solid waste management plan. And so County Council approved to advertise an RFQ for a professional consulting service, professional consultant to develop this plan for us. An RFQ has been drafted and it's being reviewed presently, and the goal is to advertise by the end of August. The next slide just gives the goals that we have drafted. Now, these are not finalized. We're still looking for feedback from folks, but our solid waste management plan goals are to ensure that the county has sufficient processing and disposal capacity for its municipal waste for the next 10 years. Of course, that's obvious because it's a 10-year solid waste management plan that's mandated. We want to be able to account for alternative or alternate sustainable methods of municipal waste processing or disposal through consultation with the county Sustainability Commission, us today, us here. So we will definitely be talking with the Sustainability Commission about alternative methods of waste disposal. Consumption reduction is probably the best way to talk about that. And taking into consideration our goals as a Sustainability Commission. The goal of the management plan is to ensure maximum feasible waste reduction of municipal waste or source separated recyclable materials, to assure the effectiveness of the county's recycling programs and investigate the feasibility of organics collection and composting methods for inclusion in the plan. That's very new. That has not been included in other versions of the plan, but I think it's very important for us to investigate for sure. We want to conserve resources and protect the public health, safety, and welfare from the short and long-term dangers of transportation, processing, treatment, storage, and disposal of municipal waste. And we want to engage heavily with county stakeholders and provide extensive outreach to obtain feedback from all communities. So these are the goals that we are sharing with in the RFP to get a consultant to come in and help develop this plan. Just as a slide reminder for the future, we are working on streamlining our county's operations, creating an open and transparent guide to county operations for facilities, fleet management, public works, parks and open space, conservation district, and planning. There's more to come on this, but just wanted to leave this as a place marker moving forward so that we can remember to talk about this in the future, how we're building sustainability and resilience into our county operations. There's a question from Steve Clark. Will the solid waste plan cover recycling? The answer is yes. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, on our last commission call, I thought there was a question someone asked about what happens to our recycling. Is it actually recycled? Is it burned? Did anyone follow up on that, or is that?
Well, I did not follow up on that, but I can say that it should not be burned if it's a recyclable. But I will follow up for the next meeting. I apologize. I didn't catch that one from the last time.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I think we're all confused what happens to our recycling.
Yes.
I think that's really something that varies from municipality to municipality because that's who is contracting for the recycling. And it depends who the recycling vendor is.
More to come. Now that I have some help.
We,
with Karen
yeah,
and Pico- yeah, sorry,
for
go ahead.
our municipality, we're getting stonewalled by our vendor, so it just seems to be a black box. Anyway.
I think the solid waste management plan that will be developed, we're going to find out so much about what's going on. We're asking the consultant to touch base with the 49 municipalities in Delaware County and find out exactly what's happening in each one of those municipalities in terms of waste and recycling and all other programs. So this should be eye-opening for sure.
Francine, I wanted to just, circling back to the 1724 courthouse slides you had. This last week I met with Representative Scanlon's office to ask them to help us. And they are going to help us explore getting the courthouse designated as a national monument.
That is wonderful.
Which is a very long process. It'll be years before it ever happens. But if it did, it would come under the National Park Service and Department of Interior and have dedicated funding. So
that's wonderful. It sounds sustainable.
Right. I mean, for anybody who tuned into those discussions, we're all happy to take it, but we have not figured out how to pay for it moving forward. So anyway, I just wanted to give that, if anybody is interested in kind of being a part of that or knows anything about, has gone through that process before for any other site, we're looking into it.
You know, Elaine, this is Christine Ruther. I just think what's important to recognize as this moves forward is, it's not going to freeze opportunities that could come about with the existing group, specifically the Historic Commission, and work that they might be doing. So I actually think that's kind of a long shot to get national monument designation, and people ought to be aware that from a preservation perspective, there are going to be decisions made, I'm sure, about how to preserve it, to what level of historic restoration that can be afforded, and to make sure that the space can be used in some fashion that might move it forward in a more sustainable fashion. So I think it would be great if we can get there. I will absolutely take any federal assistance we can get, but I also expect that there will be an ongoing effort made locally to try and deal with the needs of maintaining the courthouse.
May I mention one little thing here, or is this not?
Oh, hey, Beverly.
I'm Beverly Barnes, Preservation Manager at Delaware County Planning Department, and I'm very excited about all of this, and especially about the news from Scanlon's office. But I am happy to, please enlist my help. I've gone through some of the National Register eligible as well as National Register listing processes myself, and even the first rung of it, the eligibility, can gain us potential grants, which is good to know. But I'm happy to help, and if the Hertz Commission can assist at all, it is a long process, but the point is, it could gain us something, and especially recognition and other people who care. So I'm happy if there's a subcommittee or something, or you want me to investigate anything, I'm here.
Great, thank you, Beverly. That's great.
Thank you. Anything else?
I got an email in the Go Green Delco email a few weeks ago asking about trash and where about Covanta, and I know we've been talking about that a while, and they asked us a few questions, but I did not have the answers to them. And I know we're starting a zero waste subgroup, and I was not sure if I should wait and hold those questions to give to that subgroup, or talk about it within this meeting. If anyone has anything they can help me with. Should I like send the questions to the committee or anything else?
Hey, push your mute. Sorry, we're in the same office. I apologize, there's a weird echo. Just so, you know, in the future, I would want to discuss that prior to the meeting so that we can have a better way of describing it and having an answer, a possible answer. But I do appreciate you bringing it to the commission. Why don't we share the email with the commission, because it was quite long and there were a lot of components of that, Pippa. And we'll share it with the committee, the commission, everybody, so you can all see what the question was for the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Pippa, could you check the email right now and see if any public comment came in on Francine's presentation?
Yes, something did come in. Should I like read the whole email and who it's from? Yeah, okay, so
yes.
I'm gonna mess this last name up. I'm really sorry. Karen Tossig Lux emailed us and said, "Hi all, I am very glad to see that the SW plan goals will be considering organics. Media Borough has had many inquiries from other Delaware County municipalities about how they could start their own food compost program. Has there been any discussion of establishing a county compost farm that could handle food waste as well as yard waste?" Yeah.
Yes, and the answer is yes, for sure. Yes, we are. So any ideas that folks have, we've been posting social media blurbs. So Pippa has been really awesome in creating social media accounts for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And we're asking for folks to share ideas. And Dr. J, she's putting together a survey where we're going to try and get more information from folks about the sustainability work that's going on in the county. So any model programs that anybody has, we'd love to know about them. So media and the organics program there, we would love to know more. I did meet with the Media Borough EAC not long ago and heard really great things about the work that's going on there. But now that Sharon's coming on board, she's going to be able to help me a lot in terms of being able to get more information to the Sustainability Commission and in our plan. Sharon, did you want to say anything about that?
No, that's definitely one of the things we want to look at. For one, we need to assess what organics programs even exist in our county, and then see what the commission maybe wants to set as a goal as expanding them or offering more or working with certain vendors. Those are some of the things that we can decide once we assess what actually exists.
What I'd like to suggest is that actually our correspondent here, Karen, happens to be the administrator of the Media Borough Organics Recycling Program and is the person that you want to talk about to find out how it works. So she did not bother to mention that on her email, but she is doing a great job on running that. And we've been part of the program since it was piloted, I guess, a couple of years now. And it's a great program. And so Karen is the person who knows about it.
As we dive into the solid waste management plan process and start doing investigation in the 49 municipalities and learning about what they're doing, I'm sure we're going to have a deeper dive into media and learning what they're doing, because it's definitely a model program. Anything else? Any other questions or emails? All right, thank you.
Okay, so now we have Rob Graff. We talk about DVRPC all the time on every single commission meeting, and so it stands for Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. And Rob Graff, who is the manager of the Office of Energy and Climate Change Initiatives, is here to talk about some stuff. So let's listen to Rob.
Rob, you're muted somehow. I don't know why, because it doesn't look like you're muted.
I have two ways to mute myself, and I used the other one by mistake. So I'm just making sure you can see my screen. You should see a something that says County Outreach Program. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you all see that? Okay, great. And Sharon, how much time do I have? Because I know we're about 5 minutes late. Do you want me to tell me when I need?
20 minutes is okay. I think it's still fine.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. It's an honor to speak with you briefly this afternoon. As Francine and others who know me will testify, I can talk for a long time. So I'm inviting and encouraging Sharon to give me a 5-minute warning to wrap up so we have time for questions. It's great to see so many people engaged. I want to compliment Delaware County on their leadership in sustaining sustainability at the county level. I believe they're the only county in Pennsylvania that has, well, outside of Philadelphia, that has, and maybe Pittsburgh, maybe Allegheny County, that has a sustainability chief sustainability officer. In particular, I want to thank Delaware County DVRPC board reps, city council or county council member Christine Ruther, and Tom Schaefer, transportation planning director, for the ongoing support for DVRPC by Delaware County. My name again is Rob Graff. I've been at DVRPC since 2007, and in 2008 I established the DVRPC Office of Energy and Climate Change Initiatives. I served with Steve Clark on the Haverford Township EAC. I was appointed by Governor Corbett and reappointed by Governor Wolf to the PA-DEP Climate Change Advisory Committee, and I serve on the Drive Electric PA Coalition and the National Academy of Sciences Transportation Research Board Standing Committee on Extreme Weather and Climate Change Adaptation. Before coming to DVRPC, I was instrumental in developing the Global Reporting Initiative Sustainability Reporting Standards when I was working with Ceres. So I will be talking to you about who DVRPC is and some of the resources we have, particularly related to sustainability. And if I have time, a few thoughts that I have on what you might wish to consider in doing your work. In the interest of reduce, reuse, recycling, I have adopted this presentation from one that DVRPC staff gave to Upper Darby Township on June 22nd, hence the rebranding here from municipal outreach to county outreach. Most of the programs I'll be mentioning are run by other managers at DVRPC, so my knowledge is limited on some of them. With that warning, I'll get started. If I can advance the slide. So DVRPC is the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for the 9-county Greater Philadelphia region. 4 of our counties are in New Jersey and 5 are in Pennsylvania. Despite our name and despite all the calls I get from people wondering about the Delaware Turnpike, we have nothing to do with the state of Delaware. As you know, the Delaware River separates Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and New Jersey would never allow something to be called the Greater Philadelphia Planning Commission. It was created in 1965 to plan for orderly growth and development of the bi-state region. It was sort of an outgrowth of the highway program to make sure that federal transportation dollars were spent in comportment with what regions actually needed, not where political power was. It's got to be an 18-member board, and as I noted, Christine Ruther and Tom Schaefer represent Delaware County on that board. We do a lot of work. We have a staff of about 120, which allows us to do pretty much more or as much as any regional planning commission in the country does on planning. We have offices ranging from transportation, land use, economic development, equity, open space, and of course, energy and climate change initiatives. We have a lot of resources. If you go to our website, dvrpc.org, and play around with it, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of web maps of like potential disadvantaged communities, vulnerable populations, essential services. I won't read all of these, but we have census data there, easy to navigate. Several municipal resources guides. I'll be talking about some of those later, information on funding and so forth. And recently we've done some work on COVID-19 resources. We are guided by really 2 documents, or 3 documents rather, a long-range plan, a transportation improvement program, and a work program. I'll talk about the first 2 of these. The long-range plan is updated every 5 years. It provides a vision for the region's future based on some key principles. It serves as a blueprint for our future transportation facilities and services, and sort of underlies all of our work. Our draft 2050 plan, which I don't know whether Commissioner Ruther or Tom Schaefer have seen it yet, but it proposes to set a net goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions in the region by 2050, matching President Biden's goal. We also produced some implementation tools for how to implement the strategies in the long range plan. Our transportation improvement program is the agreed upon list of priority transportation projects in Greater Philadelphia. The program is multimodal, which includes federal and state funded projects for a 4-year period. The program reflects estimated costs and schedules for highway and transit projects and represents over $7 billion of transportation infrastructure investment in the 9-county region over 4 years. Developing and maintaining a financially constrained transportation information or transportation improvement program makes the region eligible to receive and spend federal transportation dollars. So those are our required documents, as well as we put together a work plan as well. We also work on capital projects with that are on the on our transportation improvement plan through the PennDOT Connects program, which helps to coordinate with municipalities and counties before projects are designed, including making sure that an intersection can handle bicycle pedestrian facilities well. If you're designing a bridge, make sure you have room for bicycles to go over it and pedestrians if available. Stormwater, make sure the conduits or the culverts rather are sized properly for future climate conditions. And then there's a maintenance program, and we do some. I'm going to these slides. I don't know everything on this slide, so I'm going to move to the next one. We also have a community and economic development program. We manage the comprehensive economic development strategy for the Greater Philadelphia region together with the Economic Development Agency, the Federal Economic Development Agency, and help manage their funding program. Projects need to be in this document to be eligible for EDA funding. You can find out more about that on our website. We've done some work on COVID-19. As I said, this was originally prepared for Upper Darby, but we have data dashboards comparing visits, comparing how different municipalities fared in the pandemic with transportation and so forth. We manage the Regional Trails Program, which manages, I can't remember how many miles Tom may know, of trails in the region, including the Darby Creek Trail, which is actively in progress of being built. And we gather trail counts, who's using the trails as pedestrians and cyclists, and that, of course, has increased greatly during the pandemic. Some of the trails have been almost too crowded at times in good weather. Now that it's 95 degrees, not quite so much. We have done some work on return on environment and return on trails, economic returns, such as the economic value of protected open space is what this publication is. It's being updated. It was done in 2011, and it's being updated right now. The advisory committee for Delaware County and some of the other counties, and the advisory committee has met already, its first meeting, and it's going to be completed by the end of the year. So that may be helpful in looking at some of the value of the open space that you're preserving. The existing document provides lots of information, but it will be updated for some of the dollar values, but the concepts are laid out well in this document. I manage the greenhouse energy and climate change, Office of Energy and Climate Change initiatives, and our main project is as I noted, the VRPC's long range plan sets a goal. Our draft long range plan, which has not been approved by the board yet, sets a goal of eliminating net greenhouse gas emissions in the region by 2050. So to track progress towards meeting this goal and to help shape energy use and greenhouse gas reduction strategies in the region, both for DVRPC and communities and counties, DVRPC has since 2005 published an energy use and greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the region. Our most recent one is from 2015. It was published in 2018. We're working on the one it was going to originally be for 2020, but because 2020 was such a strange year, we're going to probably do it for 2019. We're working on that right now. There's a map on our website that contains all 350 plus municipalities in the region. If you click on anywhere on the map, it will show you a 4-page report formatted on the emissions for a particular township, the amount of money spent on fuel and the amount of money spent on energy, and so forth. Let me just go back one slide. This is a slide I added at the last minute, which is why it didn't flow in my patter here. So this shows the 2015 inventory, and you can see where these are million metric tons of emissions in the region. And you can see where the emissions primarily come from. They come from basically burning fossil fuels to create, to directly heat houses, either natural gas or heating oil, burning fossil fuels to create electricity for heating buildings, burning fossil fuels for transportation. Those are the primary. You can see these three categories. These three categories make up, 90+% of the emissions in our region. Then the other categories are industrial processes, which is emissions from things like manufacture of concrete that have nothing to do with the combustion of fossil fuels, but have to do with however you heat limestone to make cement. You're going to create greenhouse gas. You're going to create carbon dioxide, even if you heat it with electricity. Fuel refining, just transmission distribution. Those are sort of fuel refining plus leaks from the. I'm sorry. Hey, Deb, can you pick that up? Sorry about that. Sorry. This is the problem of working from home. And then, of course, residential energy use as well. Those are the main ones. So, and waste management, as you see, which I know people focus a lot on, is a relatively small portion of the emissions in the region, as is agriculture. So the reason we do this is to help people see what they should focus on. So the main things people should focus on, in my view, is burning fossil fuels, is reducing fossil fuel use in buildings and in transportation, which you can do by cleaner fuels, energy efficiency. So that's electric vehicles, electric heating, cooling, and building insulation and air sealing. Sorry, I'm a little famished from the interruption there. This shows the comparison between the 2010 and 2015 inventories. You can see emissions went down quite a bit from 2010. They were around 84 million metric tons in the region, and then they're about 75 million metric tons in 2015, which is a pretty significant decrease. And it's on track to sort of get to where we need to get. But what we've done is evaluated where these come from. So the reds here show why things increased. We had employment growth. We had employment growth. We had increased driving, we had a little bit of population growth, and we had increased waste emissions per person, but then we had decreased energy use per job. The weather, since global warming meant we needed less heat to heat our buildings. A little bit lower energy use per household, probably due to federal standards and of Energy Star, and also people throwing away their tube TVs and working with LED TVs. But the biggest decreases are in on-road emissions per mile, which is due to federal CAFE standards, and change in electric generation and heating fuel mix, which is almost wholly due to getting rid of heating oil and replacing it with natural gas, and getting rid of coal and replacing it with natural gas. So, so keep this in mind as we go forward. We have a wonderful resource that, well, I'll say that I put it together, so I think it's wonderful, called Municipal Management in a Changing Climate. It was sent to all the DVRPC municipalities. I'll be happy to mail hard copies if I can get physical addresses for people, Francine or Sharon. And it's also available to read on our website, although it's designed as a brochure. It's about this big, and it's like a piece of paper folded in half, and it's about 30 pages, and it gives an overview, well illustrated, easily readable, but scientific overview of current and projected changes to the climate in Greater Philadelphia, including historic, from 1870 or 1880 forward to today, and how these changes are expected to affect the regions, and what operational changes municipalities might want to consider to best serve their residents and businesses. One of the issues is extreme heat, and I'll get to that, I hope, next, if the slides are as I think they are. Yes. So extreme heat's the most lethal weather-related event. It's expected to become more of a problem, of course, as climate change proceeds, as we saw in Seattle and Canada and Philadelphia, I suppose. So this includes an overview of extreme heat, its current state, and how much we can expect in the future, including a mapping analysis of regional heat islands. We have this at the county level as well. Expected impacts on populations, particularly on environmental justice communities, analyzed through a heat vulnerability index, which we created. And this has just come out. I think it was put out in May, and recommendations for reducing the effects of heat islands and preparing for and responding to inevitable extreme heat events. I'll certainly be uploading the county level maps onto our website. We've shared this analysis with a number of folks, including the US EPA, and they want to get involved with us piloting it in this region. And we're starting with Montgomery County because they wanted to do that with us, but it will come to Delaware County soon, I hope, once we get some insight from what Montgomery County learned. In partnership with the researchers at UC Davis, University of California, Davis, we've developed an electric vehicle planning tool to map the distribution of electric vehicles and charging demand in the region. It's built on detailed data that we have of the location and vehicle identification number of every vehicle registered in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It shows electric vehicle distribution at the census block level for both states. It has tabs for distribution within the DVRBC region and within the states of New Jersey. And it also has information on workplace demand. So here, the map on the top left shows the distribution of electric vehicles in the region of December 2017. We have just received 2021 data, and we'll be receiving the data every year going forward. Over here shows the projected distribution of vehicles in the region when we have a 5% penetration. And the bottom of the map shows the demand for workplace charging within the region at the census block group level. So essentially, where are people going to be wanting to charge their vehicles? If I could move forward to the next slide. So now I'm going to zoom in on Upper Darby, which sort of shows how this works at the local level. You can see each dot here represents a future projected location of electric vehicles, just so you're not concerned about whether there's one in front of your house. The dots are randomly distributed within the census block group by the number of vehicles, so we don't know that there's going to be a vehicle at this spot. The map also provides the census block group boundaries and provides some information on those census block groups. For instance, this particular block group currently has 2 electric vehicles, but we're projecting that it will have 25 in the future. And this can be helpful in planning for where to locate charging infrastructure, particularly if you overlay it with where single family housing is. So now looking at the workplace demand in Upper Darby, you'll notice a high demand in the block groups here in this part of the map. And what the map allows you to do is to make that transparent. And then you can see, well, lo and behold, that 69th Street area where there's certainly an employment center and a place where one might expect a relatively high concentration of electric vehicle commuters. All the shape files can be downloaded through DVRBC, and I can go into much more detail about this if anyone wants. We also maintain an online resource for municipalities to guide them through the process of understanding electric vehicles and how they fit with their municipalities' needs and ambitions. It includes a whole number of modules, including an EV 101 guide, some information on selecting which fleet vehicles to electrify, guidance on installing vehicle charging infrastructure, information on grants and rebates, et cetera. And as Francine knows, we have worked with Brian Hvac and Jack Bierling, who I see is also on this call, to assemble a grant application for 15 GM Bolt vehicles, all electric vehicles, and the associated charging equipment. That application was successful and then brought in, I can't remember, a couple $100,000 to install those. And we're able to work with other municipalities. I'm now working with Upper Darby on similar issues, and I'll be meeting in person maybe with the Media Borough EAC in September to talk about on-street charging. My colleague Liz Compitello, I know, spoke with you earlier, so she may have touched on some of these projects. So it's the street lighting project, the Soul Smart project related, well, the street lighting project, hang on. Well, the street lighting project, the Soul Smart project, and some work we did on energy efficiency and local government operations. Soul Smart is about making solar power easier to, removing some of the barriers for installing solar power, including sample permit language and so forth. And we have done that. If you look at our bicycle ped program, we've done a lot of work on level of traffic stress and connectivity, which the folks call LTS, which shows what areas are, where you can, we've classed all the roads in the region on where you can feel comfortable riding at various levels of comfort, I guess. And so this is an analysis that we did. I won't get into this at all around the Upper Darby 69th Street train station to show which roads would best benefit improvement in order to allow connectivity between existing low stress roads and where the stress needs to be reduced, where to focus, that kind of that kind of work. So which roads are would most benefit from bike lanes to allow riders to go longer distances. I won't go through this now. These are all the contacts for the various bits of work. This will be in the slides, which will be forwarded out later. So here I'm going to go into, this is just 2 slides. This is what I was working on when I jumped off the call for a while. So my work, so I want, what can a county sustainability commission do? What can DVRPC do to help this? And my work focuses on energy and climate, so these recommendations primarily focus there. I'm going to do my best not to bring us all into deep despair. I suggest that if you are able, you look at Ezra Klein's opinion piece in yesterday's New York Times titled, "It Seems Odd That We Would Just Let the World Burn." It's a really spot on, honest, direct, stare in the eyes look at the policy challenges of climate change. The challenge is really to find actions that are both politically viable and also have some significant impact on either greenhouse gas emissions or climate change or preparation for climate change. In a market-based democracy, both of these are delicate tasks. As we've seen in recent weeks in the Pacific Northwest, and just yesterday, I think it was, in Western Germany, the devastating impacts of extreme weather are likely to become more frequent and severe as climate change proceeds. Remember that this summer will seem cool in 20 years. This may be the coolest summer of the rest of our lives. Yet calls for action that cause too much inconvenience or cost too much will not get wide acceptance. So for greenhouse gas reduction measures in particular, we need to focus internally on the impact of greenhouse gas emissions, but publicize these initiatives by talking about their impacts on things people care about immediately, such as the cost of goods and services, cleaner air, more comfortable buildings, lower asthma rates, cars that require less maintenance, and so forth. Looking at the facts, it's difficult to see how the world will manage to keep global warming below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold specified in the Paris Agreement, let alone the 2 degrees Celsius threshold that most climate scientists agree is the boundary beyond which human society will change significantly. That said, it is better to be below 3 degrees than below 4 degrees, and better to be below 4 degrees than below 5 degrees. So anything we do is beneficial. One of the things that I'm working to do with Christine and Sharon is coordinating with other counties in the region. We're facilitating a dialogue among the de facto county sustainability managers in Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties. That's being organized right now. I think it's important that counties support and work together with the state and federal governments on implementing their programs and understanding their programs, and to prepare for hotter weather and more intense rainfall by providing cooling centers, moving people out of floodplains, restricting or eliminating development in floodplains, encouraging green stormwater infrastructure, and when rebuilding roads, to enlarge culverts and raise bridges, because the water flowing through that is only going to get greater. Let's see, I think I have one more. Okay, sorry, I've got a different slide, but I have to have the text here, sorry. So preparing for, so adapting the proverb that it's better to travel hopefully than to arrive, I think is important to focus on what you can do to reduce emissions and prepare the county for the inevitable impacts of climate change. But don't despair if you don't see rapid results. As Rit Agarwala, who Mayor Bloomberg called the brains behind Plan YC, New York City's groundbreaking sustainability plan in 2007, he told me once, people always overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. As you begin to work on a problem, you find allies and resources you were not even aware of when you started. So you may be really optimistic you're going to get a lot done and you're going to run into barriers, but you'll start to uncover allies and resources. And I hope DVRPC can be both an ally and a resource. And then don't only focus on greenhouse gas reduction, but focus on preparing for climate change. Plan buildings and roads for the climate that's going to be occurring over their useful life, and plant trees that are most likely to survive future climate conditions. And on that, I think, finally stop and be happy to take questions if there's time. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you.
Thanks, Rob. Steve, you have a question?
I do. Hey, Rob, in line with showing your note on showing tangible results and the urgency of now, could you discuss just a little bit the tracking progress work you guys are doing, and whether it's something that we could possibly work with DVRPC on providing metrics for amount of PV, number of cars, all that kind of good stuff at the county level?
Yeah, my colleague Ben Griswitz is working on that document. And I was just talking about that earlier today in a DVRPC call. I don't know its status right now, but once it's out, there's a lot of challenges with measuring some of the things we want to track. For instance, PV is very difficult to measure. There isn't good data on installed PV that capacity. It's just not available. There's also not much data on, there is information on installed PV capacity, but there's not, you don't know how much it's actually producing. You just know its capacity. You don't know whether it's in an area where it produces 30% of the time or 20% of the time, or whether it's shaded. So it's challenging to get that information. And also, we are not able to get any information on who purchases clean energy. That's just simply not available because that's proprietary information. But yeah, I'd be happy to share with you the metrics and get any help getting that, because getting that data is really challenging.
The commission would be interested maybe in having Ben give a show and tell sometime.
Yeah, that might be good. It'd probably be good to set up a call with him to see what he has that you're interested in, because we track a lot of things like road condition and how many people have driver's licenses and a lot of issues related to transportation that may not be relevant. So you'd want to have them focus. Let me just mention, let me look at this slide that I have up. So in addition to focusing on talking about the benefits that people can get other than greenhouse gas reduction that you need to track, but people often don't. They want to know that this is going to cost them less, it's going to be more comfortable in their home or their office. But also focus on the big emission sectors. Anything that burns fossil fuels is a big emission sector. That's what you should focus on. Energy use in buildings by conservation energy efficiency, such as air sealing and roof insulation, transportation through denser development, which isn't much of a problem in Delaware County, better public transit, including doing things like cover public transit stops so that people don't have to stand in the rain or the sun to wait for a bus, electric vehicles, particularly freight delivery vehicles, which are ideal for and some fleets of municipalities, which can be great. And then electricity generations, renewable or zero emissions. Now I have this thought here, but we need to make this for everyone. And one of the challenges I personally have with rooftop solar is it's often only for people who have their own home that happens to be in the sun, rather than working on making the entire grid cleaner. So I think it's important to do both. Anyway, and also, as I noted before, these are the big sectors. Solid waste is an important sector, but in my opinion, a lot of sustainability people spend more time than is merited on it, and burning fossil fuels to move diesel vehicles around, to move biogenic carbon, to compost it, may not necessarily be the most effective thing that people can do. But that's just one of my axes to grind. So anyway, sorry, other questions?
Yep. Pippa, could you check the email and see if we have any questions from the public?
Yes, I just checked it, but I'll check again. No, we don't have any new emails.
Okay. If anyone have any other questions for Rob, we can definitely bring him back in the future to dig deep into some of these questions or some of the information that he has on these slides.
Rob, you left out, I think, another big sector is replacing fossil HVAC with heat pumps as something that should be definitely on the table.
Absolutely. I should have put in energy use in buildings, not just conservation and energy efficiency, but also fuel switching from
Electrification.
yeah,
Yes.
electrification in general. Thank you, Steve. Because if you electrify now, the grid is likely only to get cleaner as we move forward. So yes, thank you for pointing that out, Steve. I'll change this slide, which I put together about 20 minutes ago. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Rob. If anyone has any other questions for him, you can always email me later and I can make sure that we get connected. While we're switching over, Carol, back to the other presentation, we just noticed that we have a
Rob,
quorum
can you stop sharing your screen, Rob?
Yeah, I will do that. I'm also going to email my
Thank you, Rob.
put my email in the chat.
That would be great. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Carol, we just noticed that we have a quorum now with Stephanie coming on to the call. And so if we want to do our approval of the meeting minutes from the last meeting, we could do that before we go into subcommittee update.
Oh, great. Perfect. Okay. So, oh, wait. So tell me again who just entered?
Stephanie did.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Just to be official, Stephanie, can you say present or here?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So here are the meeting minutes from our June meeting. So I'd like someone to make a motion to approve these meeting minutes.
Ed McGargy, I'd make a motion to approve these minutes.
Thank you. Can someone second that, please?
Second?
Okay. Was that Dave?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, so moved. Our meeting minutes from June are approved. Excellent. So I'll share my screen again and we'll continue on. Oh, yeah, so next on the agenda is a report from the Greene County Operations Subcommittee. But let's see.
David, would you like to do that update? There we go.
Whoops. Sure. So basically, I won't read it in its entirety, but basically we have finished our first draft of our Greene County operations plan, and we are revising it in format and presentation with a lot of help from Sharon, and so that it is really ready to be integrated with the overall sustainability plan. Part of that is to start talking about goals, specific goals, and measurable target numbers. So that's where we're continuing to talk, but basically we're done the immediate work of assembling the overall plan.
Thank you, Carol. We could go to the next slide. Unless then there's anybody else from the Greene County Operations Subcommittee that would like to say something. Okay, I'll fill in for Jacqueline unless there's somebody else from the Countywide Sustainability Plan Subcommittee that would like to chime in. We met once. A lot of it talked about what was in draft form in the committee subfolder, some ideas about outreach, and some ideas that I'm literally going to present after this about organizing the framework of what the committee's been working on. So we just met once. And we were kind of waiting for today's meeting to decide on the next steps on exactly what needs to happen next in that subcommittee. So that's the update that we have for this time. Does anybody from the subcommittee want to add anything?
I just wanted to mention, I believe Stephanie is co-chair with Jacqueline. I don't know if Stephanie wanted to say anything.
I think probably Sharon is more involved in it at this point, since we haven't met since a few weeks.
I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Good point. Good point. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so what I'm going to do for probably most of the rest of the time is talking about sustainability planning framework that I would like to introduce to the commission and be able to kind of reorganize the work that's been going on, because there's a lot of work going on, and put it in a framework so that we can turn it into a really fantastic plan. So go to the next slide. So I wanted to kind of reintroduce this as the beginning of the program. I hope everybody enjoys the picture on the right-hand side. That's my favorite Philadelphia picture of myself and Dr. J. So my responsibilities are going to be organizing the development and the implementation of the sustainability plan, working and organizing the outreach and engagement for the plan with the Sustainability Commission, the subcommittees, talking to stakeholders, the public, all different types of departments, assisting with facilitating your commission and subcommittee meetings and updating the commission website accordingly. You all can consider me your administrative backbone, helping the secretary and the vice chair and the chair organize the meetings and kind of get things posted properly in accordance with the Sunshine Law. If you go to the commission website now, you will see that all of the agendas and the minutes up to today have been posted, and I am working on putting together all of the presentations from the past meetings so that we can also post presentation slide decks. So every time we have a meeting, we will make sure that the agenda is posted 3 days before, that the minutes are posted as soon as they are approved at the next meeting, and then the presentation is also posted so people can look at the content and not just look at the recording. So I'm also going to be coordinating the research and the analysis for the sustainability assessment, our goal setting and analysis and vetting of the individual measures that we'll be putting into the sustainability plan. I will be responsible for developing and maintaining the county's sustainability-focused social media presence and its website, and then monitoring and reporting on our implementation progress as we get things implemented. So next slide. So one of the things that I want to introduce is this framework for planning, and this is ICLEI's Sustainability Planning Toolkit. When Francine talked about this assistance with climate action planning, it's actually done with this ICLEI Climate Action Planning Toolkit also. So this is the thing that kind of goes with it on the sustainability side. So you all have been working on the pre-milestone planning, basically making a commitment and organizing the team that's going to be doing the work, and that's the commission plus all of the different people within the county government, and then we'll be talking outside to the public. So milestone 1 is actually conducting a sustainability assessment. 2 is establishing our goals. 3 is developing the full-blown sustainability plan. Then we implement the policies and measures and then evaluate progress and report results along the way. So I'm going to dig into these a little bit deeper on the next slide. So milestone 1 is conducting the sustainability assessment. We need to begin to define the scope and guiding principles and gather and analyze data. And what you all have been doing is doing a lot of the scope defining and the guiding principles. So we have a really good place to start looking at the data, and you've already started gathering some data. We have to inventory existing sustainability measures and greenhouse gas emissions, and I've already started working on a little bit of that, and I'd love to get more input into that. And then soliciting ideas from the public and key stakeholders. That's going to be an important thing that we're going to be probably working on in August, September, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So then milestone 2 is establishing our goals. Once we actually understand how these things are actually happening in the county now, then we can actually set goals that address the issues and decide our targets of exactly where we want to be at some time in the future. And we'll talk about that more in a second. We also want to brainstorm possible strategies or actions to meet the goals, solicit more ideas from the public. We have definitely multiple versions of outreach that we have to do. First in the high level goals, and then once we get them a little bit more set, then we get some more information from the public of what they think, and then announcing our goals. Then the ideas on the right are a little bit further away in time, so I'm not going to go into them in detail. But once we develop and prioritize measures with the implementation plans, actually develop and write our plan, then we get it adopted by council, and then milestone 4 and 5 are implementing things and evaluating our progress depending on the timeline that we want to do. So then we have one thing we haven't, I missed, of course, a lot of the conversations you all had in October and November. So you may have talked about this a little bit more in depth, but I would love to have at least one commission meeting or a couple of subcommittee meetings talking about equity and our inclusion practices and how we are going to be actually monitoring and measuring how those are going to be included into our plan. I'm not going to go into the general principles of practice that are in the equity inclusion area today, but I wanted to at least bring it up as something that we need to maybe delve in just a little bit more deeply and decide how we want to address it as a commission. So we could go to the next slide. So this is kind of a framework of all of the different people and their roles, and how the sustainability plan is not just one person or one commission or a group of people, directors at the county. It's actually everybody working together. And so one of the neat things, though, is that you all have already been working on the things that a sustainability commission works on, providing strategic guidance, we will be reviewing findings of the assessment. You've brought in subject matter experts into the commission meeting so you can learn about what's going on. And Rob's presentation on DBRPC means I have a whole lot more documents to actually look at when we're doing our assessment. So I'm very happy that we had him on the call today. There's my role at the top, where it's all about coordinating the plan process, manage the actual writing of the plan, and then coordinating implementation. We've got our internal interdepartmental team. We've got a whole bunch of them, all of our directors of the different departments actually on the commission, which is really neat. But we also probably need to grab some more people in certain departments that are going to be working on some of the implementation of it and being able to talk to them and go from there. Then what we need to focus on over the next couple of months is bringing in the general public into the participation of this and getting their input on some of the high level goals, and then actually doing maybe some focus groups with very specific community stakeholders to also help with the brainstorming. Rob, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, if I can just sort of mention something, I meant to mention this before. We have coordinated with PADEP on their program for the last 2 years, including with 3 municipalities in Delaware County, Haverford, Upper Darby, and Chadds Ford. And also we've been working, Montgomery County is doing a county-wide plan under this year's cohort. So it might be beneficial for you to talk with them. That's part of the reason we're putting together this multi-county plan. So they've gone through this process as a county, so they could give you some excellent advice on how to make it work best.
Fantastic, thank you.
Sure.
Steve, you have your hand up, but it might be up from earlier. Do you have a new question?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I'll take it down.
Okay, I'm just checking. Just making sure. We could go to the next slide. So I know we do have this vision that was adopted a couple of months ago, that a sustainable Delaware County is one in which all people have access to quality, energy efficient and resilient infrastructure and community assets that are powered with renewable energy in connected and safe neighborhoods. They have quality medical care and locally sourced healthy foods are affordable and accessible to all. A high quality education is available for lifelong learning and helps all access good, well-paying jobs. Natural and human systems are deeply connected and thrive, and the benefits of a more sustainable future are centered on the needs of those historically most vulnerable and marginalized in our communities. So I just wanted to kind of bring this up again to kind of remind us that we've already worked on the vision. We may end up refining it once we actually get a little bit further into refining our high-level goals and actually perform our assessment. But I wanted to acknowledge that you all have been working on the vision and actually had adopted one earlier this year. So one of the things that we need to focus on next is actually creating our SMART goals. They have to be specific, be clear and specific on the goals so that they're easier to achieve. They are measurable. That is a super important part. We can't just say we want to make our buildings more efficient. We need to say we want to reduce our site energy use in county-owned buildings 20% by 2020 or something like that. Like, we need to actually make it measurable so we can see where we are with our goal attainment. They need to be actionable so that we can actually take action on something. If we have, one of the things that we'll talk about in the future is, does the county actually control it? Or is it something that a municipality controls and that the county can only influence it? Or is it something that individual public members do and that we can educate them? So we need to kind of think about our different goals and exactly which bucket they fit into and exactly what actions we can take at a county level. So one of the other things that it needs to be is realistic. We don't need to say, let's be climate neutral, have net zero emissions by 2022. That's not realistic. We're not going to do that in the next year. So we need to make sure that the timelines are something that the county could actually achieve. And then that they're time bound. We need to actually put dates on things to help us stay grounded on what we need to be doing. The next slide. Can everybody check their mute buttons? I have some background noise and I'm not quite sure where it's coming from. So I want to show you a couple of examples that I've seen some frameworks using this from some other cities and counties. This one right here was actually used with Sustainable DC, where they actually have a goal. Like, say our goal, it's the high level goal of protecting, restoring, and expanding land ecosystems. Their baseline is their protected land ecosystems in the district was 350 acres. So their target was by 2032, they want to restore, protect, or create or improve 2,000 acres of critical land habitat. So that's a number that they can measure the difference from their baseline to their target. And then they have a whole host of actions. This is not just one action on this particular goal, but I think they have like 7 or 8 actions that are going to then end up contributing to that high level goal. Then we have like one of the middle ones is an interesting one. Increase the proportion of energy sourced from both clean and renewable sources. At their baseline, only 1.5% was actually coming from renewable sources, and that's on their energy grid. And so their goal is by 2032, increase renewable energy to make up 50% of the energy supply in the district. And so they have multiple actions, again, build and support commercial and residential renewable energy projects, and a whole host of other actions. So we could go to the next slide. So here's another example. If anybody wants to look up Clark County, Nevada's sustainability plan, it is, I put the link on the website so that when we distribute the slides later, you can actually get to the link. Their sustainability and climate action plan is beautiful. It is one of the neatest plans that I've seen and so easy to understand. So on the left-hand side is their goal. They want to reduce energy consumption in county buildings and operations. Their metric is total energy consumption from all their county facilities. Their baseline was a certain amount of MMBTU, and they're using 2019 as their baseline. And then they have a mid target and a final target. So in 2030, they want to have a 20% reduction in their MMBTUs. And then by 2050, they want to have a 40% reduction. So this is an example of the same kind of goal, baseline, this is where we are, then we're going to have a target. But I thought this one was interesting to show because it had multiple targets. They actually did some mid-level targets and then their final target of, because they do have a net zero emission target by 2050. So we can go to the next slide. If anybody is controlling.
I think it's Rob, unfortunately, Rob Graff. He needs to mute. I just asked Sean if he could do it.
Okay.
Poor Rob.
I just keep hearing noise.
Yeah,
please
I
mute.
can't. Yeah, I can't mute anybody.
I tried.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. So what I wanted to do was take some of the work that was done by the Greening County Operations Subcommittee from their operations plan and plug it into this framework. And so one of the things that we were talking about a lot was transportation. So the goal, and some of this is me interpreting their operations plan and putting the wording in as how I interpret it. So this is not the final wording on the next 3 slides. I just want to show you some examples. So the first goal would be to reduce fossil fuel use in fleet vehicles. So the baseline, we don't have a baseline because we haven't done our full inventory, at least I haven't seen it. But we do have the start where we had 15 electric vehicles purchased. So that could be our baseline is maybe, let's say last year, and we had 0 electric vehicles in our fleet. So we would then create a target with number of vehicles converted to electric by some date. And then a possible action could be working with the DVRPC and the Vehicle Electrification Coalition to prioritize vehicle conversion. And also a second action could be applying for an additional AFIG grant funding. So one of the other baselines that would have to do with this particular goal is installing EV fast charging stations, because we can't have the EVs working if we don't have the stations to be able to charge them. So one of the baselines could be how many fast charging EV stations does the county have accessible? And we can decide whether or not they're county owned and operated, or if they're just available to the public and a county vehicle could charge there. It's something we have to decide. So the target could be the number of EV charging stations installed compared to the number of EVs. That could be one of our targets. And then the action could be installing EV chargers at fleet storage and other county office locations. So we'll go to the next slide. So I pulled a couple of the ideas out on the energy side. So one of the goals would be to reduce energy use in county-owned and leased buildings. And we have to decide if we're only doing county-owned or if we want to include leased buildings, especially if we pay the energy bills. That's a decision we have to make. The baseline is we don't have a baseline yet because our FP&A group, architect group, is still working on our baseline benchmarking, putting all of our buildings into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Once we actually get the buildings in there, then we can see the status of what all of our buildings are using in energy, and then we could create a target. Let's say it's a % reduction in site EUI by some date. So some of the possible actions are using the FP&A and ASHRAE Level 2 energy audits, creating a 10-year plan to implement capital projects and address deferred maintenance that affects energy usage. Action 2 could be creating a continuous retro commissioning plan and training building operators on best practice operations and maintenance skills. And then action 3 could be examine and update preventive maintenance program. So as another example, the second one, increase percentage of source energy provided by renewable sources. And this I probably need to write there in county-owned buildings. So our baseline is I don't have any information at this moment if any of our county-owned buildings have solar on them and at what kilowatt capacity. So that's something that we need to collect the information. If we collect the information and find out it's 0, then our baseline is 0, and that's okay. But then we have to set a target of % of county buildings energy use that is provided by on-site renewable sources, and maybe say that we want to get to 20% by 2030 or 50% by 2035 or something like that. So once we get the baseline done, then we could set a target. And one of the actions to increase that source energy is to assess available roof and land space and develop a plan for implementation of new solar on county-owned buildings. So we can go to the next slide. So one more example from the Greening County operations. This is one where I took a lot of latitude in taking the information from the subcommittee and kind of breaking it out based on the waste management hierarchy. Because when you are talking about waste management, if you don't break it into reuse and recycling and energy recovery and all of these different pieces, it's really hard to manage what actions need to happen. And so what I did was I took the subcommittee's information on improving waste management and diversion from the landfill and broke it out into multiple different ideas. So the second line, we could talk about reducing the amount of waste produced through better purchasing policies. One of the things that we need to assess is, do we have a green procurement policy now? If we don't, that's okay. So our baseline is no, we don't have a green procurement policy. And then what is the total tonnage of waste being removed from our buildings, which is why we need to have a waste audit before we can set any targets for our waste management in our county-owned buildings. So a possible target could be % reduction in total amount of waste generated. That's all about minimization and actually looking at the total number. Action 1 and Action 2 are developing green procurement policy and then examining outsourcing contracts for opportunities to require greening purchasing practices. So one of the other ideas that I've seen implemented in a couple of other counties that are super cool is talking about reuse. One of the goals that we could have is to improve the ability to reuse county-owned assets and supplies. So my question for an assessment would be, do we have a central storage for furniture or office supplies? Is our purchasing centralized or is it decentralized? And what changes could we possibly make in that process to be able to improve the way we purchase things? So a target could be, what if we develop a supply exchange program where we're actually swapping supplies in between different offices in the county? Somebody ordered too much paper over here, they're just not going to use it. Is there another office that could use that within the county operations instead of it sitting in a storage closet? And the target could be, we want to get to a certain number of supply exchange events per year. So this is some examples of taking what the Greening County Operations Subcommittee has been working on and putting it into the framework. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so the important thing that we have to do next is actually do the assessment of the existing conditions. So we need to assess and benchmark current status of county operations and other countywide efforts. The Sustainability Commission has actually gathered a decent amount of information about some of this. So it's just me going through some of the information that's in the slide decks and then talking with some of the commission members to see what they gathered. And then taking that information and going to department heads, going to other groups like the DVRPC and seeing how I can fill in the gaps of that information. To assess existing conditions, we need to do some public outreach on high-level goals, which we need to do some refinement of the high-level goals, but then do public outreach on it. What we want to do is survey the general public about their feelings about sustainability. What are some of the challenges that they have now in maybe doing some sustainable work if they do want to do it? Or what are some of the other issues that are happening in the county that we could possibly address through our sustainability plan to make things better? We want to survey the municipalities for their programs and policies and make sure that we understand exactly what policies are in place for the 49 different municipalities and what programs are active and running, especially like for, let's say, recycling and waste management. We've got to inventory all 49 of them or we're not going to be able to set a good target. Then we also want to survey our county employees for input on the high-level goals. I haven't decided as to whether or not this is going to be a survey or it might be in-person focus groups with the individual departments just to get their input. Some of the best ideas come from our county employees because they're the ones that are actually on the ground doing the work. and I consider them an incredibly valuable and important part of this process. So we need to make sure that we spend some time talking with them and seeing how we can improve things. And then it's also reviewing existing state and county regional state plans. I've downloaded a huge amount of information from DWRPC, which Rob just gave me a couple more things I need to add to my list. Looking at stuff from the Pennsylvania DEP, and then all of our existing plans for the Delaware County 2035 and transportation plans. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's an example of why public outreach is really important on goal refinement. We were approached by the Friends of Hines Refuge just the other day talking about the problem that they're having with trash floating down their watersheds and then collecting in the marsh and the refuge there. And so one of the things that we could possibly do is because this is an existing issue, we probably want to very much call this out very specifically in our sustainability plan and create a goal, or at least mention an action if we're talking about waste management or watersheds or something like that. However we refine that goal, then we can take one of the actions and very specifically, let's say, create stormwater and waste management awareness out campaign that's very specifically on the watershed that has to do with Hines Refuge, to see if we can't reduce the amount of waste going into the watershed that ends up there. So that's an idea. This is why we need to talk to the EACs and all of the different groups within Delaware County so we can find out some of the really specific problems that they have so that we can address them in our sustainability plan. We go to the next one. So this is a very short list of some of the existing plans that I'm actually going through right now. I actually read the 363-page transportation plan yesterday. So, and there is so much good stuff in these plans, especially the bicycle plan, which I didn't even list here. And I've only gotten through about a third of the open space, recreation, and greenway plan, where the planning department, which we saw in their presentation a couple of months ago, has some sustainability language built into the current existing plans. So what we want to do is capitalize on that. If the whole bicycle plan that was envisioned about 10 years ago is actually implemented, it's beautiful. So what we need to maybe do as a sustainability commission is that I'll go through the existing plans, assess what's already in there, bring it to the commission, and see how we can build our goals and our targets around some of the things that are already planned within the city. So this is just a short list. If you all have suggestions of other things that I should be looking at to assess what's already existing in some of our plans, please email me and go from there. I see your comment, Sean, or Tom, sorry. Yes, I actually did read the whole entire transportation plan from cover to end. We'll go on to the next slide. So this was an interesting thing that I saw in the Delco 2035 plan, talking about the process that they followed. And this is going to be one of the interesting things as I was looking through this. They had this quote, which might be really good for us to include into our sustainability plan, is that the county's powers are limited to suggesting refinements to local actions that reflect the goals and objectives of the Delaware County 2035 plan, thereby promoting the county's interest. And so that's really a very important thing for us to consider. When they were doing their planning process, they started out kind of the same place as we are, as doing the county profile, inventory, and analysis, which is what I'm calling the assessment. They built out a land use framework, which was their basic goals of what they wanted to do with the land, which is what we're going to do, is kind of refine our high-level goals that you all have been working on. Then we involve the public, do some really good outreach and get some input into it, and then refine the plan and create our targets. But number 5 is one of the super important ones, where this quote is really important for what we do, is the plan adoption. They did outreach to all of the municipalities to actually have the municipalities formally adopt the plans. And so that's going to be a really important part of what we do in our sustainability plan, is the outreach to the municipalities, involving them in the process so that they are more inclined to actually adopt the plan later on, and we can all work together on making things happen. We'll go to the next slide. So I wanted to pull out a couple more things from the plans that I've read so far. In the open space plan goals, they have this really neat framework in a lot of the Delaware County 2035 subplans, where they have these big high-level action verbs, which kind of give you this framework to work around when you're looking throughout the whole entire document. So one of the 3 goals for the open space plan is to conserve, enhance, and connect. And I think that concept is really cool. If we could tie in maybe some of our sustainability planning framework into the rest of the Delaware County 2035 plan, and actually maybe come up with some high-level goals that we can play with that kind of weave their way throughout the whole entire sustainability plan. So I wanted to point this out to you guys. Go to the next slide. So another thing that was really interesting in the open space plan was the framework of coordination. And so they took that idea of, okay, the county influences, the municipalities take the action, and then, you know, we can maybe educate public members and that kind of thing. And they actually wrote down in the open space plan what the county is responsible for, what the municipalities are responsible for, and then what partners and the public are responsible for. So I thought that was a really good way to frame it, especially on the county side, which is the level that we're working at in our sustainability plan, of providing technical assistance, doing special purpose studies, coordinating open space, recreations, greenways development across the county, providing guidance on natural resource protection. We can actually take this concept and flesh it out for our sustainability plan. Go to the next slide. So one of the other really cool things that I saw in the transportation, I actually saw a lot of cool stuff in the transportation plan, but the concept of complete streets, where a complete street is a multimodal transportation policy that aims to accommodate all users on the roadway, whether they are driving, bicycling, walking, or taking public transportation. And I think there's a lot of planning around that, where if we want to have a bicycle plan that puts all of these beautiful trails and bicycle lanes and crossings and things like that all over the county, we've really got to implement it through this complete streets idea that the Department of Planning is working on. So that may be the way that we actually write it into the sustainability plan. Is our goal is to, you know, make sure that all transportation projects are built to complete street standards. Maybe we can do a goal of, or a target of, increasing the number of bicycle lanes painted on certain streets, you know, that we can play with this. But I think this concept of complete streets is something we should really capitalize on, because the planning department has done a huge amount of work on it. So go to the next slide. So another thing that is in the transportation plan is a bicycle network. And I pulled these images off of 2 different pages. And if they're not the exact same thing, I'm sorry in advance. But the one on the right is existing as of 2009. One of the things that I want to do is get with the transportation, the planning department, and actually see if we have an updated version of this on our bicycle friendly routes. But the plan from 2009 was to implement this beautiful bicycle network with bicycle corridors and proposed multi-use trails. So maybe one of the goals or the targets of our sustainability plan is to make sure that this is implemented, or that we are finding grant funding or doing some of these things to make sure that the plan we already have is actually implemented in full, and give it a deadline, so that we can say we want to have this beautiful bicycle network by 2035 or 2050 or something like that. So that's an example of taking what's already existing and then capitalizing on it. So we can go to the next slide. So this is where I wanted to have a little bit of a conversation. I don't have anything else necessarily to present, but so these are some of the ideas on the next steps that I want to talk about just a little bit before we kind of wrap up the meeting. So we need to do some refinement of high-level goals because there are some really neat high-level goals in all of the information between the two subcommittees. I think we might just have to do a little bit of refinement of them so that we can then take it out to do some public outreach. And then I have more direction on exactly what to assess on current status of county operations. And I'm going to come back to that bullet in just a second. One of the other things that I'm going to be working on is performing assessments. Once we refine those high-level goals, is performing assessments and initial outreach based on the high-level goals. And so I'll be the one organizing it, but I will also probably ask for help from county departments, from the commission, to gather all this information and then start doing the public outreach. And it might be interesting depending on what type of public outreach we do, whether it's only surveys or if we feel like we need to do some meetings with some local stakeholder groups or do some focus groups. It might be quite interesting to have a commission member, if possible, at maybe some of those meetings. So we still have to plan that out, but that's just an idea. After we do the assessments and the initial outreach, then maybe while some of that work is going on, we could either in the subcommittees or in the next commission meeting, talk a little bit more about equity and what is our goal for the sustainability plan, very specifically on the equity side, and whether or not we need to actually make a statement on equity. There's a little bit in our vision, but I would love to tease that out a little bit more and then take some information to some focus groups of some individuals and groups within the county and get their ideas of what are their challenges that we need to address. And then based on the assessments, we'll bring the assessments, bring the results of the surveys back to the commission. And honestly, a lot of you will probably be involved in that whole entire process along the way, but we'll need to do a formal presentation at one of our commission meetings. And then based on those assessments, turn those high-level goals into SMART goals with metrics and targets and kind of go from there. So that's an overarching next step. And that's probably at least 6 months of work. I'm going to say the assessment, the benchmarking, the surveys and focus groups. I'm actually going to be living in Delaware County in about a week and a half and really need to be in town to be able to get some of this stuff started. I'm going to say probably at least 2 months to get that part of it done. And we'll just see how it goes from there. And then the rest of it is bringing everything back to the commission and discussing things. So one of the things that before we talk about the next step of how do we refine our high-level goals, does anyone have questions? I know that was a lot. I just wowed everybody and everybody's in agreement.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that I thought your overview was just excellent, and I want to thank you for everything that you're doing.
Here, here. Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't have a question, but I did want to comment that your thoughtfulness in the way you reviewed what's out there in such detail and the way you are facilitating this is masterful. So we really appreciate it.
Francine, was there anything, I was not really looking at the chat while I was talking. Was there anything in the chat that we need to address?
No, Rob Graff did mention, he gave a resource, but I think that's it.
Okay.
Oh, he did mention PA Climate Action Plan is in the final form for review.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Sharon, it looks as though you've acquired a lot more reading material.
I did. When Rob, I was like taking notes from Rob's presentation. but definitely, yeah, I still have a lot to read, which is what I'm focusing on in the next week and a half while I'm still in Maryland. And then once I actually get in the office, focus on some more in-person meetings and starting to do some outreach. So. Any other questions or thoughts on just the content of the presentation?
I'm sorry, I looked more at the chat, and so Ed, he did mention the Darby Creek Valley Association annually conducts stream cleanups in the Darby Creek Watershed that is a tributary to the refuge. And he gave some, the flow of debris and litter is a significant issue with a link to DCVA watershed cleanups.
Okay, that's great. I'll definitely take a look at that. Oh, thank you, Steve, for that link for the GIS layers. That will be very helpful.
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
I'm definitely going to go ahead.
Worth a look, because everybody talks about equity, and it becomes more and more fuzzy when you think of what that means. But this team has put together maps of many dimensions of equity, and it'd be really interesting to see how some of them overlay on Delco.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something that Julie could put on or take a look at, or
I know she has some in the planning department, and we did a little bit of a conversation on it, but I just need to be able to dig into it. And I actually have some other equity resources from my previous job that I can delve into. But I think one of the most important things about equity practices is actually going into the depressed areas and that are having issues and talking to them personally, which is definitely on my list of things to do, to make sure that we really understand the issues at a deeper level, and then we can address them in the sustainability plan. So I'm really looking forward to doing that kind of outreach. But I definitely want to make sure that I have some guidance and a little bit of framework from the commission around how the commission feels about equity before having those kind of conversations. So we can definitely plan that into one of our commission meetings. Any other questions on the content? Okay, so then the question I have for you all, and you don't actually have to speak up. Sometimes it's easier just to put like a vote into the chat box so that we don't have 18 people trying to talk all at once. There's a couple of different ways that we can refine the high level goals. We can either try and schedule a working session where we're actually going through them one by one with everybody on a Zoom call, or I can try and interpret what I've seen in both of the subcommittees thing, just like I did on the slides where I showed you the stuff from the Greening Operations Subcommittee, and refine it through a shared document. Actually share the link with everyone. Everyone can go into the document, make edits, make comments, do suggestions, and just try and do it through this shared doc, because some of it, it may be that I just have a question that could be answered by one or two people. And then it's a very well refined goal. I just need a question to get clarity. And so those are the two options, is trying to schedule something, which I think might be super difficult due to vacation schedules, as we saw with our almost quorum at the beginning of the meeting. My inclination is to do it through a shared document, where over the next week, I can put things into a shared document. I'm kind of halfway there, email it to everybody, and then give everybody a deadline of when to have comments and refinements in the document. And then you can do it when you're able to do it based on vacations and work schedules and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there's like a third version of a way to refine our high level goals that anybody wants to propose. But if we just want to put in the chat, which you'd prefer, either a working group session or a shared document in the chat, and we can kind of see where people are leaning. And this includes our county government folks. Which one would you prefer?
So are you talking about, Sharon, like taking the goals that we already have?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in all of the documents that you have in your subcommittee, there's some really great goals in there. Some of the wording might just need to be refined. or maybe I had a question of exactly how you wanted to apply it. And so I had
you
a
might get
feeling
to
shared
this-
document was going to work.
Yeah, you might get
Go
to
ahead.
this later, but I feel like, I think I said this last time too, like, I feel like this is, I'm so glad you're here. I feel like you are outpacing our subcommittee, and our subcommittee is not like, we just don't have the, I mean, I don't have the time to like do the research that you're talking about. So I'm confused like how we can continue with our subcommittee. Like if we could maybe help with the outreach part of it, or I'm just trying to figure out like,
Totally.
this is
Yeah,
just,
well,
yeah,
and I
it's
think,
amazing.
you know what
It's
though?
just, you know.
I know, and I wanted to kind of get the feel for the group with like this first presentation and introducing this framework, because then maybe in our next subcommittee meeting, we could actually talk about that. Because I think the outreach part, because until, I think where some of the subcommittee work has been stuck is that we don't know the existing conditions.
Right.
And until we had somebody, me, here to physically dig into everything and give us existing conditions, then we couldn't go on to the next step. And that's why it felt a little stuck, or you didn't have time, and that's why I'm helping. So I think what we could do though is at the next subcommittee meeting, talk about that. Like what is, because we're going to be developing some basic surveys that we want to send out to everybody and get their input in on their surveys. So maybe the sustainability plan subcommittee could review the surveys, or help on building out the stakeholder list of exactly who we should be distributing the surveys through to get really good information from the general public, that kind of thing. Because we only have maybe like 20 followers on social media. It's not like we're going to be distributing our surveys through our social media. We could through the county, but brainstorming some of the outreach ideas, I think would be a great thing for the subcommittee to help with. Yep. And then for greening operations, I think we were talking about maybe stopping that one for a little while, because we really got to finish some assessments on the greening operations side. They've gotten as far as they could without finishing assessments. So it sounds like in the chat box that everybody is pretty on board with the shared document idea. Okay. So then
I just want to mention we have 83 followers on Instagram, and we just opened the account last week, so hopefully we get many more.
That's great. So my next steps basically are what's the first two bullets on this section is putting high-level goals that I can find from the subcommittee into a document where we can, and maybe actually introduce some more, because maybe I thought of some others that maybe weren't addressed on a particular document, and then send it. That I would say probably is in the next week and a half. I know Francine and I are both moving. I'm moving next Friday and she's moving the next week. So we've got a little bit of pause for moving and vacations and such. So if you don't see something for at least 2 weeks, don't be surprised. So I'll get that shared doc to you. And then I will be working on coming up with the surveys, working on some of the continued assessment of reading the rest of the Delaware County and DVRPC and Penn State plans, so we can pull out some good stuff from there and keep moving on that. So those are my next steps before the next meeting. So you will hear from me in a couple of weeks. I think that's it for my presentation. We could go to the next slide and we can give you a communications update. We do have our new social media. So what I would love is for everybody on the call, everybody on the commission, to go on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, whatever is your flavor, and like or share these links with other folks so that we get more followers and get some ideas. And if you ever have any ideas of things that we could post on there, you can just email us and we can add it to our list of things, because we're trying to post at least once a day. It doesn't always happen depending on what we have to share.
I'd also like to say, if you guys see anything on other like social media and you think it's a good idea for us to post something similar, feel free to like DM it to the Sustain Delco account, because that'll be the easiest and quickest way for me to be able to see that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And to start working on that outreach and distribution places to be able to send out our survey. We are building a master stakeholder engagement list. There were a few ideas that were in a document in the Sustainability Commission folder, but we need to add to it. So if you have any connections or ideas about associations, the environmental action committees, nonprofits, et cetera, big businesses that might share our information, please email the suggestions to me so we can add them to the stakeholder engagement list. Yeah, it should be a really big, beautiful, awesome list. And I think it has maybe 10 things on it right now. So we need your help in the commission to send it to us. I also have a Delaware County email. So if you want to remove the Dr. Sharon J at Gmail email out of your systems, you can now email me at js@co.delaware.pa.us. So, gotcha. And then next slide, Carol. Our next meeting is August 19th at 6 p.m. I put working group session on here because I wasn't sure whether or not we were going to have one, but it sounds like we're not. Just too many vacations and such going on. Do we want to, Pippa, you want to check the email for public comment?
Yes, let me check. There are no new emails on the account.
Okay. Then we could go to the last slide, Carol, and I'll turn it over to you for any other things.
Okay. Yeah, so does anyone have anything else they would like to bring up? It's 3:56. And if not, I'd ask if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn. Oh,
I'm sorry, I do have one thing that I'd like to share that.
Yeah, please.
So the Delco Greenways grant is open. The Open Space and Recreation Municipal Grant Program is open. And that means that of the 49 municipalities we have, they can apply for grants from $50,000 to $500,000 for greening their communities. The applications are being accepted from August 27th to September 1st. And you can go to the delco.gov planning website to see exactly how to apply.
Thank you, Francine. Anything else that anyone would want to bring up? Okay, with that, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll move we adjourn.
All right, thanks, David. Can someone second that?
Ed McGargy, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, so moved. Our meeting today is done. And just thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone on the commission, but also anyone who's watching the live stream from YouTube. Okay, thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.